All right, we're going to start our clay sculpture. The first thing you need to do before you get your clay is to write your name on a piece of paper so that you can put your sculpture on top of it. Then you're going to get a chunk of clay. You'll need to make two pinch pots. I'll give you two pieces that are the correct size. You start by squeezing the clay until it becomes a sphere. You want it to be nice and round. You can tap with your hand to get the bumps out. Then you hold this in your hand and you put your thumb in and you squeeze from the bottom around. Try to make the clay even. Just keep turning it and squeezing it, turning it and squeezing it till you have like a cup shape. Take a look. I want the walls of this to be a little thinner, so I'm going to gently squeeze. Do not squeeze around the edges because you need a nice chunky edge to join the pinch pot together with the other one. All right, once I feel like I have a nice even pinch pot, I'm going to make a second one about the same size. Squeeze it, bang out any bumps. Just keep squeezing and turning, squeezing and turning. Every little pressure that you make with your hands, the clay will react. So if you're really too rough with it, you're going to push it too much. So I'm going to make another pinch pot, put my thumb in, turn my thumb around and push it down towards the bottom. Then start squeezing and turning, squeezing and turning. Remember, don't squeeze the top too thin. You need that clay so that you can join it together. When it looks to be about the same size as the other one, I think I need to make it just a little bigger. This is going to be a hollow sculpture, so we're going to put some newspaper inside of the sculpture so that while you're working on it, it doesn't collapse. So I'm going to take a piece of newspaper, crumple it up, shove it in the hole. And keep your hand supporting the clay while you push the newspaper in. All the pieces should be inside. And I crumpled up the second one already. Crunch it nice and tight. Push it inside the clay. Now see if they're going to match up. All right, so now that they're the right side, if there's too much newspaper, you have to take it out, rip some away. You should make it so the newspaper's flat with the cup. Then you're going to take a tool that you can do what's called score. I have little tools that look like little rakes. You can also use, there are some that have little scratchy marks, or you can even use the end of any tool to make marks. Whatever you can make marks with. So you're going to scratch it all up. This makes it so that it will join the other piece of clay more easily. Then I'll do the other side. Now I'm going to wet the edges of this clay with some water. That will make a better joint. It's sort of like gluing it together. Take your fingers, get it a little wet. Okay, now you're going to push the two pieces together very firmly. Then you're going to take your finger. You might have to stop and dry off your finger because it will be too slippery. So I'm going to dry off my finger. Then I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to pull the clay together. Like smear it and join it together with my thumb. Whichever side has more clay, you pull that side over. If you find it easier to use a tool to spread the clay, you can try a tool. I think my finger is the way it works the best. Now you're going to squeeze and shape this clay into the body of your gargoyle. I think I'll make the bottom half a little bit wider. I'm going to set it aside and take another piece of clay. I'm going to make the head of my gargoyle. It's going to be a smaller piece, maybe even a little smaller than that. I'm going to make another pinch pot. Squeeze it and roll it. Do the same process until you have another head shape sticking out. I'm going to need another piece of newspaper. I think this one is going to need to be a little smaller because the pinch pot is a lot smaller. Put that piece of newspaper inside to keep it from collapsing. I'm going to score my piece. I'm going to figure out where the head is going to go. Where do I want it to add on? And then I'm going to score the area where the head's going to join. Put some water on. Get it nice and wet. Some water on here. Dry my fingers off a little bit. I'm going to push the head on. Then I need to take my fingers and smear the clay together. This way, if your hands are too wet, you need to maybe stop and dry them off so that you're not making a mud pie. Don't want a mud pie. Want a nice clay sculpture. All right. I'll shape my face and features in a little bit. Now I'm going to make some legs. Need another piece. Save some for maybe some wings. I'm going to do what's called rolling a coil. So I'm going to squeeze the clay in my hand until it becomes a hot dog shape. Then I will firm my hand up and very evenly press down and roll it. If it starts to go flop, 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 stop and press it so it's a more even shape. I think that's plenty. You want it to be thicker than your finger, otherwise it will not support your sculpture. I'm going to now cut this into 4 legs. So I'm going to try to find the middle, cut that even, and then cut it into 4 equal sections. You can line them up to see whether they're pretty even, and if they're not, you can adjust them. Then I need to figure out where I'm going to have my gargoyle standing. I think I'm going to put his legs to support him in the front like that. So if you look, it's going to hold him up. And then I'm going to join him up. So I'm going to scratch on here. Scratch on here. I need to put some scratch marks on my legs. I think I'll just dunk the end in to get it wet. Push my leg on nice and firmly and smear the clay in place. Fingers are still too wet. Do that when I get a little water on the end. Push it into place really tightly. You can fix the shape of things after. You want to make sure that you make nice, tight joints between your clay pieces or they will fall off. I find it a little easier for the legs to use a tool to smear the clay in. Now set it up and put those legs where you want them to go. Now I think I'll put these legs on the sides so it looks like he's sitting. If you want him to look like he's standing up, you can join the legs on the bottom like this so that you have him standing, or I'm going to have him sitting. I think he'll be more secure that way. So I'm going to join these pieces on the side. I'm going to put some score marks on the sides of my legs. Put a little water on the sculpture. Push them in place. Blend the clay in. It's nice and soft. Do this side. You have to make sure that you smear the clay together to make a nice joint. Now if I want to put other details on my clay sculpture, maybe I want to make a snout. I could start to pull and push the face of my sculpture. If I want some ears, I could pinch some clay to make the ears stand up. I could use my fingers to smooth this all out. I'm starting to get a weird looking head. You can push the clay in to form the neck if you want. You can use tools to smooth, maybe make the depression for where the eye goes. Okay, getting there. Oh, I squished my foot a little bit. I think I'll put some wings on my sculpture. So I'm going to take another piece of clay, roll it kind of out. Then I'm going to flatten it using my hand. And then turn it over. I'm going to flatten it again. Turn it over, flatten it again. Now I have a pancake. Make sure the pancake is not any thinner than your fingers or it will just break. I'm going to cut my pancake in half. And then I'm going to see what kind of a shape I want for my wings. They seem a little big. I can bend it. I can take my fingers and push it and pull it until I have a shape that feels more like a wing. Let's look at it and see if that looks like wings. I think I like those. So once I have that in place, I'm going to score. I'm going to get a little water. Don't forget these steps. It's important that you put the clay together correctly. Now, if my wings are a little bit soft, they may be too big. I might have to cut them a little smaller so that they'll stay on, or balance them in such a way that I'm happy. Remember, every little touch that you do on your clay, if I don't support what I'm doing, it's going to fall over. So I'm going to have them smeared on. Get smeared on the inside. Make sure they're joined on really good. If they're not staying up for you, now we got a pretty good set of wings on there. Could do some manipulating, and I think I like that. Now with the time that you have left, you can add any details. If the class is over and this is all you have, that's what your sculpture is going to look like. I am going to open up my sculpture's mouth by taking the knife and cutting a slit there. Then I can open it. I could put some nostrils on him, like with a little clay tool. Push them up like that. If you want scales, I have a different size tools. You can push the tool into the clay and create a texture all over his body. This is if you have the time. If you don't, then you're going to just paint your designs on. So if you don't have time for the textures, if you decide to texture somewhere else, like say I want to make a wing texture, maybe I'll draw some lines to make it look like feathers. Draw some lines in this part. Then I'm going to continue with all of these scales going down my gargoyle's back. Just pushing those textures.